Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way up until Monday Night Football and break down the tight ends in every single game, whether you should start or sit the tight ends. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. And if you'd like access to my weekly rankings, they'll be available on the Patreon link in the video description for $7.50. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 1 tight end, start or sit decisions. We begin with the first game of the season, Thursday Night Football, the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs. In this matchup, both of the tight ends are must starts, as these are both guys you drafted as top 5 tight ends. Travis Kelce in a lot of leagues was the tight end number 1 or 2 off the board. Andrews typically the tight end 3 or 4. Now, when it comes to Mark Andrews, there was some worry about the car accident that he got into, as the Baltimore Ravens were dead quiet like they were in a library when it came to talking about this scenario. You didn't hear anything about it. There was an undisclosed injury, but based upon the most recent reports, Mark Andrews will be good to go in week number 1. So if you were worried, don't worry at all. The Baltimore Ravens heavily consolidate their targets, meaning it's really just a team that's going to throw the ball a bunch to Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. It's not like an Oprah Winfrey offense where you get the ball, you get the ball, you all get the ball. It's just going to be a whole ton of Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews. This game could go either way, meaning I think this could end up being a very high-scoring game, a rock'em sock'em robots affair where both teams are beating each other down, or maybe this ends up being more of a low-scoring defensive battle, as both of these teams have great defenses. Regardless, though, you're going to start Mark Andrews every single week. You didn't draft the guy inside of the top 4 or 5 rounds to sit him in a matchup that could go nuclear. Travis Kelce is a must start as well. Mr. Swift, entering into this year, did end up as a bust last season. Well, if you look at his stats last season, they were actually fine. The biggest issue was we paid the piper for him, right? We had to draft him at a very high pick. He went inside the top 6 of a lot of drafts, definitely inside of the first round. And if you drafted him, you ended up incredibly disappointed. But this is a new season where he's fully healthy coming into the year, which was not the case last season. Travis Kelce, in my opinion, is still the best tight end in the NFL, and he has the best quarterback throwing the ball his way. No need to think anything else besides ranking Travis Kelce, in my opinion, as the tight end number 1. And Travis Kelce is the free pick over on Underdog Fantasy. If you guys are new to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you'll receive a free pick like this one. Travis Kelce higher than 0.5 total yards. You match that with another pick'em player like Travis Kelce's teammate, Patrick Mahomes, higher on his passing yards. If both of those hit, you receive 3 times what you enter into your pick'em. So if you guys are new to Underdog Fantasy, make sure you guys click on the link in the video description for that first time deposit bonus of up to $1,000, as well as receiving the special pick here, the free pick of Travis Kelce, higher than half of a total yard. Next matchup here, we got Friday Night Football. The last time a game was played on Friday was last year on Black Friday, where my Miami Dolphins beat down the New York Jumbo Jets, the Green Bay Packers at the Philadelphia Eagles. The players have been warned not to leave their hotel, so it's just a great idea for the NFL to play a game overseas in week number 1. Now, that is one of my worries for this game. While if this game was in Philly or if it was in Lambeau in Green Bay, this could be that tit-for-tat high-scoring matchup, but since it is in Brazil, I do worry a little bit, because we know when the games go overseas, even if it is a great matchup like the Dolphins versus the Chiefs last year in Germany, it might not end up being that high scoring of a game that you would expect in the United States of America. Dallas Goedert will be good to go in this game after dealing with an oblique injury. You drafted him as a top 12 tight end, so you would start him here as a low-end tight end number 1. I do worry about his touchdown upside in this loaded offense, but maybe the addition of Kellen Moore can boost Dallas Goedert into being a more reliable tight end compared to the past. last. For the Green Bay Packers, Tucker Kraft currently dealing with a pec injury and was added to the injury report on Wednesday. We should have more information tomorrow regarding Tucker Kraft mac and cheese's availability for this game, but right now I am definitely a little bit pessimistic on his outlook. Luke Musgrave would be the tight end number 1 on the team very clearly if Musgrave is the tight end 1 without Tucker Kraft. But if Tucker Kraft is in, this is far from an ideal situation, and even if it's just Musgrave, they have so many other wide receivers that it is questionable. Now, the upside is certainly there, but I would most likely want to sit them. Again, it's week number 1. There's no bye weeks. Only Pitts is banged up, who we're about to talk about. So there's really no need to get cute and start a guy like Luke Musgrave in week 1. Next up, we move to the 1 p.m. slate on Sunday. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the hot Atlanta Falcons. Pat Freiermuth, I like this matchup a ton for Pat. But with the top 12 being relatively loaded this week, in my opinion, I can't really maneuver things to get him inside of the top 12 of my rankings. The rankings will be available tonight on Wednesday night over on Patreon for $7.50 a month, and they'll be updated throughout the week all the way up until kickoff on Sunday. So I can't find a spot for him inside the top 12, and this is the first game with Arthur Smith and new quarterback, Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson. I think he'll be fine, but I don't expect like a smash spot out of Pat Freiermuth. But I do like how Arthur Smith loves utilizing 2 tight end sets, which should help out Pat Freiermuth this season. Kyle Pitts is dealing with a hamstring injury, which is not great. The report was that they've kind of known about it for a while, but it just never came out. Why would that information come out? Why would such vital information just be disclosed from us? I have no idea. This is not great, but Kyle Pitts himself says there are no concerns with him playing this week. If you drafted him where you did based upon, his ADP, you drafted him like the 5th, the 6th, the 7th round, you are going to play him unless we learn on Sunday that there are going to be some severe limitations. I'm not going to get cute and bench Kyle Pitts for Luke Musgrave when even a hobbled version of Kyle Pitts is a much better player than a guy like Luke Musgrave. So as of right now, I'm not going to panic and pick up some scrub in his place. And I'm also not going to just head to the waiver wire and drop my lottery ticket running back, a guy like Rico Dowdle, Jalen Wright off my bench to pick up a second tight end unless it comes out that Kyle Pitts is truly going to be out. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the Buffalo Bills, a loaded game just like the Chiefs and Ravens at the tight end position. Trey McBride, top 5 tight end in fantasy football drafts. Dalton Kincaid, top 5 or top 6, depending on your drafts. Trey McBride is on an Arizona Cardinals team that, while in terms of win total might not be one of the best teams in the NFL, I think they're an incredibly frisky offense with a god-awful defense, which is going to lead to them having to throw the ball a bunch late in games. The addition of Maserati Marvin Harrison Jr. should add to the offense's ability to score, which will help out Trey McBride a ton. With Kyler Murray, him and Trey McBride were Eiffel Towering teams game in and game out, despite the fact that the outcome wasn't a true Eiffel Towering, right? The Arizona Cardinals were getting spit roasted in those games, but hey, Trey McBride still looks solid for fantasy. In a game up against the Buffalo Bills where I think they're going to be chasing points late, that should help out McBride a ton, and I think he has the upside to be the tight end 1 in this game. Dalton Kincaid, I expect the Bills to be winning in this game. Now, you never really know with the Bills. They did a big reshuffle defensively, so maybe they come out slow, right? Josh Allen losing Stephon Diggs, but even if they come out slow, I still expect Dalton Kincaid to be potentially even the number 1 target on this team. The Cardinals defense is Swiss cheese, so this is a huge matchup for Dalton Kincaid. Next up, we move to the Les Titans, the Tennessee Titans at the Chicago Bears. Now, Chig Okonkwo, I like him. I think he's a talented player. And we saw what he did in 2022, and it was like, okay, we've got a guy, we got this late round tight end dart throw in 2023, and then the dart throw you made missed the fucking dartboard and hit someone holding a Bud Light in the corner in the finger, right at a bar. That's where I assume people play darts. I've never played darts somewhere that wasn't at a bar, but Big, he's a talented player. But it feels like Hop's gonna play, be okay enough. It's like you're really just chasing things. You're just getting way too cute if you try to play Chig. Now, Cole Kmet, on the other hand, I could get why you would want to start him, but he's in such a loaded offense with Caleb Williams' first ever NFL start. I like Caleb in this game. I like Allen. I like DJ Moore. It feels like Cole Kmet shouldn't even be considered to start in this game because, again, how many weapons the Bears have to throw the ball to. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Cole Kmet's a great pick in, like, best ball drafts on Underdog if you're doing him in the summer because he's going to have those big games when the Bears are taking a dump on the chest of their opponents. But in terms of weekly trying to ever figure out when to start them, unless your tight end is on bye or, you know, we see the first couple of weeks Cole Kmet's just getting heavily used, then I'm probably not going to be starting him. Next up, we move to the New England Deflatriots at the Cincinnati Bengals. It appears that Jamar Chase is going to play on Sunday, and that is still something you want to follow, though. Regardless, for Mike Licky Amagasicki, he is a solid pass catcher. He was a tight end for my Miami Dolphins. I love Mike Gesicki. I love the gritty that he hits, but while he is a solid pass catcher, he is the exact opposite at blocking. His blocking ability is at 0. If it was in Madden 1-99, it's a fucking 3, right? Mike Gesicki couldn't block me. And the fact that he's not proficient at blocking could lead to Mike Gesicki not really being on the field as much as we would like. He's close to like the tight end 30 on the week, in my opinion, so you're not going to start him, and no one even drafted him, so there's no need to even worry about him. Hunter Henry, now there are some conflicting reports regarding Hunter Henry on if he will end up suiting up or not, because like about a week ago, the report was, hey, Hunter Henry's not going to play. No. And then the report from today is Hunter Henry saying, hey, I'm good, I'm feeling good, and I'm going to play. So while Hunter Henry is a bottom of the barrel start because I just don't think Jacoby Brissett is all that good, but with so much uncertainty revolving around the wide receiver position, Hunter Henry could find himself getting a decent enough amount of targets to be fine, but definitely far from a guy that I'm going to sit here and give the Gawk 9000 special to. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. Dalton Schultz will be a start here. In my opinion, he's a above average NFL tight end. But the problem with Dalton Schultz is just like with Cole Kmet, right? He is on a team with a boatload of talent around him. There are so many guys in that room. Tank Dell, Nico Collins, as well as Stephon Diggs. They also bring in a better running back, a running back upgrade in Joe Mixon, which will end up leaving Dalton Schultz as the odd man out in a ton of games. And it's going to be very hard to predict when you actually feel super confident in throwing Dalton Schultz out there. He had multiple games last season where he absolutely smashed and had 5 games with over 13 points. Again, he has all of the talent. It's just while he's in a great situation technically because his quarterback is great, the team's going to be taking a dump all over the defense all the time because of how good CJ Stroud is and all the other players. The problem is with Diggs now there, a lot of the games, Schultz will be the odd man out. Now, he's going to be a low-end start a lot of weeks because I think the Texans are going to score a shit ton of points every single week. So if you're in a deeper league, you can start him. But again, far from ideal. Kylen Granson, from what I read, will be the starting tight end in Indy. With that said, though, Granson really isn't an amazing talent. And I'm not going to say here and be like, oh, Kyle Granson fucking sucks. He shouldn't even be in the NFL, this, that, and the other thing. But I just kind of question how much volume he's going to see week in and week out. And no one has Kylen Granson on their team unless they're in like a 32-team league. And even in 32-team leagues, I don't think people have Kylen Granson. So really no need to start him. Next up, we move to the Jacksonville Jaguars at my Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins #1. When it comes to the Dolphins, Janu is going to have a few big games this season where he pops like a titty implant. But, as a Dolphins fan, I do believe that the Dolphins are going to look to cycle in and out a bunch of tight ends. So while the offense will have those big boom games where they pipe down the defense Johnny Sin style, I don't think it's going to be easy to actually figure out when to start him because it's not like Janu's just going to be the clear tight end one. They're going to use other guys. Due to Janu Smith's blocking ability, he's not the best blocker. Mike McDaniel loves tight ends that can block. Again, Janu has a lot of talent, had some solid games in hot Atlanta last year, but when push comes to shove, unless the Dolphins are just going out there saying, you know what, Janu Smith is a huge piece of the game plan when we already have Tyreek Hill, Achane, Mostert, Waddle, that's just really never going to happen. He's going to have some solid games, but again, no week are you ever going to be like, yeah, I need to start Janu Smith. Evan Ingram, easily a top 6 tight end for me. Now, on the season, I was a little bit lower on Evan Ingram compared to a lot of people. Why? Because his touchdown upside is just kind of limited, right? The last time he had a solid touchdown season with 6 was all the way back in his rookie year. He had back-to-back years in Jacksonville with just 4 touchdowns. Now, since he gets so much volume, that's enough to cut it, like that OT Genesis song. But ultimately, with the addition of Brian Thomas Jr., with the addition of Gabe Davis, is he going to be getting an insane amount of targets to help him finish in the top 3 if the touchdowns aren't there? And that's kind of where I made my mind on him. Hey, I don't think the touchdowns are going to be there. I think the targets are going to potentially retract. So he's still a fine pick. I'd still be happy with him. If he finds pay dirt in any given game, he could be a top 3 tight end. And this is a matchup where I think it's going to be high scoring. So Evan Ingram, one of the better tight ends in the NFL, completely dropped his dropping issues off in New York. Ever since he's been a Jaguar, he's been way better. So Evan Ingram is definitely a guy you want to be starting weekly with no ifs, ands, or buts. You're just going to start him. Next up, we got the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. So we just went from a game that is really going to be a firefight. It's going to be a game where there's a lot of scoring, Jacksonville versus the Dolphins, a whole lot of offense. And now we move to a game where it's just a bunch of defense because neither of these offenses really heavily move the needle. Now, I've talked about this a bunch, so to make my argument short, right, to, give you the Cliff Notes version, I think the Panthers are going to be a lot better this season. Why? Because they get rid of Frank Reich and they bring in an actual guy that knows how to get a quarterback to play up to their potential. They bring in Deontay Johnson. They draft Xavier Legette. I think the offense is going to be a lot better. With that said, up against the Saints defense, the Panthers might be in hell in this matchup. Jatavion Sanders, the term starting tight end on Carolina Panthers, is enough to know that you don't want to start him, so we're not even going to talk about him. Taysom Hill's interesting. He is an all-or-nothing type of tight end, and what I mean by that is the man is either going to go out there and score 3 fantasy points, and you're like, shit, I shouldn't even have started him, I should have played this other guy, or he's going to elbow drop the defense and score 15 or 20 points. He might throw a touchdown, he might catch a touchdown, and he might run in a touchdown all in the same game. The trifecta, right? The guy is an anomaly. I've never seen someone play like Taysom Hill. It is genuinely insane. I used to think that he had some type of blackmail on Sean Payton, but now with Sean Payton gone and Dennis Allen being the head coach, Taysom Hill is still heavily involved. Taysom Hill is one of the most overpowered tight ends in fantasy football because there's legitimately an outcome where Derek Carr potentially gets hurt, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, and maybe Taysom Hill's playing quarterback for part of the game and Spencer Rattler's playing quarterback for the other part of the game. It's crazy. But there's always the downside that he scores 0. He's not involved at all. So I would start him due to that amount of upside. I'm not going to rank him highly, but I would definitely start him over the more boring guys that I list, like Hunter Henry, or spoiler alert, we're going to talk about him in a little bit, Cade Otton. Juwan Johnson is also a guy with a lot of upside. But Derek Carr as the lead signal caller, you should not be starting Juwan Johnson. Again, really just because of the quarterback play. With better quarterback play, Juwan Johnson could be a beast. Plus, they use Taysom Hill a bunch, so really no need for Juwan Johnson. Next up, we got the Cold Like Minnesota Vikings at the New York Football Giants. If you guys have enjoyed today's video thus far, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. So we got Theo Johnson and Johnny Munt. Who the fuck are these guys, right? Who has any idea who these guys are? Now, I did a bunch of research, obviously, because I have to talk about them, but you, the general viewer, if you're not a Vikings fan or you're not a Giants fan, you probably have 0 idea who they are. To me, it seems like Munt and Oliver will fill in for TJ Hawkinson. Sam Darnold's potential tight end 1 in a timeshare spot would be absolutely insane to start, so you're not going to start them. Theo Johnson with Darren Waller going off to retire, to, kind of chase his dream of being a rapper, even though his rap music is absolute dog shit. Theo Johnson appears to be the tight end number 1 over Daniel Bellinger, who actually looked pretty decent a couple of years ago. Now, I'm not here to say that Daniel Bellinger is the second coming of fucking Rob Gronkowski, but Daniel Bellinger's decent enough. While I have heard some positive things out of report in regards to Theo Johnson, who was a 4th-round pick out of Penn State, I will not be starting Theo Johnson in week 1. While the matchup's fine enough, I actually think Theo Johnson in the future might be a guy we look to, right? Maybe Daniel Jones finds this safety blanket in Theo Johnson, because again, the reports out of camp were really giving the Sukalamink special to Theo Johnson. But in week number 1, with Daniel Jones as the quarterback, you're not starting Theo Johnson. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers at 4 p.m. The start of the late slate, and the late slate is a little bit stinky. You can kind of smell it through the screen. We've got the Raiders and the Chargers, the Broncos and the Seahawks, the Cowboys and the Browns, and the Commanders and the Buccaneers. Now, we do get 2 great night games. We get the Rams-Lions, Stafford Bowl, the Goff Bowl, and then we got Rodgers coming back up against the 49ers. So some fun night games, but the 4 p.m. slate, at least compared to the other games, just kind of sucks. But again, anything's better than no football, so I'll be sitting there with my eyes glued to the fucking TV, just like the rest of you, because we all love football. So Brock Bowers is good to go with the foot injury. Bowers has huge upside due to the fact that he is really fucking good, right? He was an amazing tight end in college, and if used correctly, he could be a top 5 tight end in fantasy football. But there are some things going against him, and this is a big but. Shout out to Alexis, Texas. The usage is a big question mark to me. The fact that he's a rookie is a question mark, because rookie tight ends normally are no bueno for fantasy football, because it's hard to learn the tight end position at the NFL level. With all that said, everything that I've read from their head coach Pierce and the offense coordinator, the beat reporters, tells you that they want to get Bowers involved early. They want to put him in the slot sometimes, give him the potential easy targets. So again, with the top 12 being kind of loaded, it was kind of hard to push him up there, but I did because of just how good he is. I like the matchup a ton, but he does feel risky because it's, again, his first ever start. Hayden Hurst had his time in the limelight a couple of years ago. We all remembered when we drafted Hayden Hurst. If any of you guys have played fantasy football for more than a couple of years, you've probably drafted Hayden Hurst before, and he had some times where he was shining like a star in heaven that we can't reach. Shout out to Troy Bolton. But 2024, there's no reason to start Hayden Hurst. There is no reason to even think about starting Hayden Hurst unless you're in a Chargers player-only league. In an incredibly run-heavy Chargers offense, just no way, Jose. Next up, we got the Denver Broncos at the Seattle Seahawks. A Noah Fant revenge game. Noah Fant going up against the Denver Broncos. I've always liked the talent of Fant, but he's never quite lived up to his expectations, right? He's kind of like fucking Jerry Jeudy. He's not fucking Jerry Jeudy, but you get what I mean, right? He's like Jerry Jeudy. All of the fame, all of the claim to the fame, and then it just doesn't really work out. Now, I do think that Fant will end up having a solid year with new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, and with the old staff gone that would constantly cycle in and out other tight ends with Fant to kind of just screw him over. In game 1 of the season, though, even against a pretty suspect Broncos defense, I won't be on the Fant train, but I will be rooting for him in this revenge game effort. Greg Dulcich has gotten steam in fantasy football before. We've hyped him up before, and it never really worked. And there's a lot of uncertainty of the weapons around Bo Nix outside of Sutton, who I think is pretty clearly a very solid wide receiver. Dulcich could pay off. But in week number 1, right? Week 1, why get cute and play a guy like Greg Dulcich? It's the same thing with Noah Fant. Next up, we got game number 13. Lucky number 13. Shout out Dan Marino. The Dallas Cowboys at the Cleveland Browns. Jake Ferguson and David Njoku are both in spots where I feel as though this game just really isn't going to be all that high scoring. While I love Dak Prescott in fantasy football in draft season, while I do think the Dallas Cowboys offense is still going to be very good, even without Kellen Moore, this is a tough spot. Both of these defenses are very, very good. And that could lead to this game being low scoring, even with the Amari Cooper revenge game narrative for him. Now, these guys are both top 10 tight ends for me in my rankings, but they can't be ranked higher, even though I think they both have the upside to do so, just because of the matchup. There are much bigger games in the future for both of these guys, especially Jake Ferguson, who I was really hyping up all summer long like the Kid Rock song. I think he's going to have a huge season, but week number 1, I don't expect him to come out swinging like Barry Bonds and hit this one out of the park. David Njoku, solid tight end, questions with Watson, bad matchup, just terrible matchup up against the Dallas Cowboys defense. So Njoku, Jake Ferguson, they're both top 10, but, we got brighter days ahead for both of them. Next up, we got the final game before Sunday Night Football, and then Sunday Night Football is the penultimate game before Monday Night Football. If you've never watched football before, that's how it works. Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Zach Ertz, probably the starter in Washington. They still have Ben Sinnott as well, mixing in. If you're starting Zach Ertz in 2024, you're just cruising for a bruising. Don't do that. Cade Otton is my lowest rated starter on the week, the lowest ranked starter, which means he made the top 18 cutoff. Amazing matchup, right? Ooh, this is a great spot against the Commanders defense that couldn't stop you out there, right? They could literally put that guy, that little kid that's like 9 years old who calls himself Baby Gronk. They could put him out there and he'd have a good game, right? But there's definitely questions with, is he going to see that crazy amount of usage that he saw in Tampa Bay last year without Canales? How does the offense look without Canales as a whole? So that's enough question marks for him just to be like, okay, you can start him, but you don't really want to. Sunday Night Football is the next game here. The Los Angeles Rams at the Detroit Lions. Sam Laporta, another one of these guys where you just don't want to overthink it. You can rank him as the tight end 1, the tight end 2, the tight end 3, the tight end 4, the tight end 5, anywhere in that range is fine with me. You drafted him as a top 2 tight end. He was my tight end 2. Kelsey was my tight end number 1. You are going to fucking start him. The hamstring is good to go on Sunday night. Solid matchup. Must start every single week. No reason to even sit here and glaze the guy. Colby Parkinson, until Higbee comes back, who got hurt in this matchup up against the Lions, I believe, last season in the playoffs, will be the guy. Stafford loves a nice tight end. Who of us doesn't, right? He's just like me for real. And why did I just sound like I'm from like fucking Mississippi or something? And nothing against people from Mississippi. I just did it again. While he will have some games where he pops, right? He has that boom, that solid game, the solid flashes. Shout out Barry Allen. I am just not going to play him again. It's week 1. No need to overthink things. Final game here. We got 2 tight ends that I like. George Kittle and Tyler Conklin. We talked about Taysom Hill a little bit earlier and how boom or bust Taysom Hill is. And that's the exact same thing with George Kittle. The reason why George Kittle's boom or bust is because Ayuk's out there, McCaffrey's out there, and Debo's out there with Kittle. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And when Kittle is such an effective blocker, it does kind of hurt how many routes he's going to run week in and week out. But there's always those games like Kittle up against the Dallas Cowboys last year where he goes nuclear, 25 kill streak, Modern Warfare 2, right? Where he has that humongous game, right? Where he scores 2, 3 touchdowns, has 100 plus yards. You remember that game up against the Saints where there was like 5 dudes forming a circle around him and they couldn't tackle him? The guy is a fucking beast. In my opinion, he is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, but he's iffy in fantasy week in and week out because you never know which Kittle you're going to get. Are you going to get the Kittle that's the king in the castle? Shout out Borat, king of the castle, I like, or I have a chair. Or are you going to get the George Kittle that is just blocking a bunch, and unless you're in a points per block league, he's probably not going to get too many points. With that said, though, all in all, to put a bow on things, you're starting George Kittle every single week, even if the risk is very evident there. You had to have known that when you drafted him, though. Tyler Conklin is a low-end start, but Conklin has actually been sneaky good for the Jets. Now, he's been drugged down, just like the rest of the Jets, by the absolutely atrocious quarterback play of guys like Dak Wilson, the MILF Hunter, but I do think that Aaron Rodgers can elevate him past around 10 fantasy football points. I'm interested to see his usage in week 1, how Rodgers looks in week 1, because Tyler Conklin could end up being like a top 10, top 8 tight end if Rodgers uses him how I think he might. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you do end up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out the Patreon, link in the video description for all my weekly rankings, as well as a guaranteed answer to any of the questions you guys may have. Check out Underdog Fantasy, link in the video description. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.